The hum of the highway faded as Mark pulled into his driveway. Exhausted from a grueling work week, he climbed out of his car, his back stiff from the long drive. He glanced at his watch. Almost midnight. The house was dark, save for a faint light filtering through the curtains. Mark's heart sank as he pushed open the door. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, but the warmth he usually felt upon entering was gone. His wife, Sarah, was already in bed, her back to him, the sheets pulled neatly over her body. "Hey," Mark whispered, though his voice carried an edge he didn't intend. Sarah turned slowly, her expression guarded. She set down her book and sat up, the blanket draping over her lap. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone cautious, as if expecting bad news. Mark closed the door behind him with a firm hand, his jaw clenching. "We need to talk." Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Mark recalled their early days, Sarah with her radiant smile and boundless energy. They had met at a community event, both worn down by life's struggles but finding solace in each other. He had always adored the way she laughed, the sound like music to his ears. Together, they built a life filled with love and promise. But now, as he looked at her, so composed, so detached, a shadow crept into his chest. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice steadier now. Sarah hesitated, her eyes dropping to the bed. "I was just reading, Mark. You were out with him," Mark interrupted, his voice rising. "With Greg." Sarah's brow furrowed. "Greg? What are you talking about?" Mark stepped closer, his anger spilling over. Don't play dumb with me, Sarah." It wasn't hard to notice the way he looks at you, the way you two would whisper together after work parties. "I thought I meant more to you." Sarah's eyes narrowed, a mix of defensiveness and hurt flickering across her face. "Greg is just a friend," she said, her voice sharp. "You can't just assume the worst about me." Mark's hands fisted at his sides, his chest heaving. "Is that right?" "Because that's how it looked to me. Every time you two would be in the same room, there was this unspoken tension. I tried to ignore it, but now..." His voice broke, and he shook his head. "I saw you both tonight." Sarah sighed, her shoulders slumping. "You did have an affair," she admitted, her gaze dropping. "It wasn't supposed to happen. We were both going through tough times, trying to support each other, and it just... It happened." Mark felt the room spin around him. The walls that once felt like a safe haven now seemed like prison bars. He turned away, his fingers brushing against the dresser as he searched for words. "I need time," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded, her eyes pools of sadness. "Take it. I just... I love you, Mark, but I needed more, and I couldn't figure out how to tell you." As the days passed, Mark found himself drawn to the quiet hours before dawn. He'd sit on their porch, staring at the streetlights, wondering how things had come to this. He thought of their wedding day, Sarah's radiant smile as she became his wife. He remembered the nights they'd share, laughing until the early morning light crept in. Now, those memories felt like a cruel joke. His best friend Greg was the first to approach him after the confrontation. Mark had always trusted Greg, but now, seeing him at the scene of the betrayal, it was hard to look him in the eye. "Mark," Greg said gently as they stood on the street corner. "I know this must be tough. I didn't mean for things to go this far. We were both just... lonely." In the quiet of the night, Mark often found himself debating his next move. Should he confront Sarah again, or give her space? Should he consider leaving or try to work through their issues? He thought about their life together, Sarah's laughter, the way she loved their children unconditionally. He also thought about the potential loss of their home, the struggles of raising kids alone. But then there was Greg, their shared history, the trust they'd built. Mark didn't want to lose either, but betrayal made it harder to see past it. One night, after a particularly tense argument, Mark found himself packing a bag. He moved through the house like a ghost, his heart heavy with the decision he was making. But as he stood in the driveway, the weight of leaving felt heavier than he'd imagined. He thought about calling Greg for support, but couldn't bring himself to do it. Instead, he returned the bag to its original spot and lay awake, staring at Sarah as she slept. For now he would stay, but the fight wasn't over yet. It was only just begun. Epilogue. The new dawn. In the months that followed, Mark and Sarah worked tirelessly to rebuild their relationship. They sought counseling, opening up about their fears and hurts. Greg became a distant memory, replaced by a newfound resolve. Their love grew stronger, built on honesty and trust, and though the scars remained, they were both committed to healing together.